I spend more time on YouTube than I'd like to admit. I generally get invested in specific channels and will watch pretty much every single video that they make as long as they're consistent and the type of content they make aligns in general to what I like to watch. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Reece, and in today's video, I'm reacting to a YouTuber known as Graham Stephan. You may have heard of him. He has definitely grown since I subscribed to him. He's got millions of subscribers now. He makes a lot of money making YouTube content, but to be fair, he makes a lot of YouTube content, and a lot of it is good content. He is a financial YouTuber, so he makes finance videos, and he covers a broad range of topics which are applicable to everyone as well as people in America. Ultimately, he is someone that I've followed for a long time now, and I wanted to react to one of his videos because I thought it was interesting, and I think that some things I agree with, some things I don't. And the video is called Why Millennials Are Financially Ruined, and that's pretty much it. Let's just get into it.
What's up, you guys? It's Graham here. So the other day, I was doing what I always do, which is spend countless hours browsing the internet, waiting for something interesting to finally come up, and then finally something interesting came up. It's a study from the Federal Reserve which found that millennials now own less than 5% of all US wealth. And I gotta say, as a fellow millennial, there's a lot of concerning trends out there that need to be addressed if this is ever gonna be stopped so that millennials can finally get a piece of what they deserve. Geez, that sounds kind of aggressive to say that they're gonna get a piece of what they deserve, but I mean it in a good way. So if you're watching this and you're under the age of 35, chances are you're making some pretty big savings and investing mistakes that could easily be avoided here in the video.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I like that he's definitely enticing people in to watch because, oh, you might be making some mistake, but I don't think that's fair. I do believe that lots of people aren't super passionate about finance, but I don't think people are oblivious to it, or people who are deciding to invest. I think that most people would be pretty much looking into it to do it the right way. They're the type of people who are definitely interested in learning about this and understanding the best way to do it. So I don't like that. I feel like that's a bit of an attack, but let's continue.
And if you're not a millennial, then you'll get to see all the mistakes that are being made and why they hold such little wealth. And no, it's not because they're early in the workforce and haven't had enough time for their investments to grow, and it's also not because they're entitled and want everything handed to them. But thankfully, the solution to this is very easy, and it's smashing the like button for the YouTube algorithm. That's right, just one easy tap on that thumbs up button is going to bring you one step closer to building your wealth. Or in other words, it helps out my channel, and then the algorithm will start recommending you other videos that will help increase your financial literacy, thereby increasing how much money you make, save, and invest.
That was cheeky. That was terrible. Why? Oh man, I hate how people... Oh yeah, guys, comment in my description below. That's why you aren't making good financial decisions. I don't like that. I think that's sneaky, and that's not something that I resonate well with. I'm going to give him a chance. I've definitely watched the video before, and that's why I wanted to make this video. So we're going to keep going.
All right, so here's what we're up against. As of right now, millennials make up 35% of the workforce, with 56 million of us out there working away each and every day, building our wealth, asking people to subscribe and smash the like button for the algorithm. Now, like I mentioned, it makes sense that millennials have not been in the workforce for as long as other generations. They're not yet at their peak earnings potential, and they have not had a chance for their investments to grow in value. But there's also a problem with that logic. CNBC reports that in 1989, when baby boomers were the same age as millennials are today, they controlled 21% of the nation's wealth, which is almost 5 times higher than millennials own today.
That is a scary statistic. I wonder what other factors play into the role as to why the gap is so large. Interestingly enough, that is a significant and substantial amount of money. So definitely something to pay attention to. And he touches on it in the video, I'm pretty sure, throughout. And it's something that I'm going to come back to as well throughout.
So evidently, there's a very big disconnect between generations in terms of how much money they're making and investing, and that is where the problem lies, and here's why. It's because millennials are lazy and won't get off of TikTok. Just kidding, but now that I got your attention, let's go over some very saddening facts.
That was a funny joke. He does that a lot on this channel, and I know it's simple editing, and the actual concept of it is, it's kind of satire, but nonetheless, it's a funny and probably relevant joke for some people.
The cost of education rose 65% over the last 10 years. Then student loan debt increased 160% between 2004 and 2017. Then because of that, millennial net worth dropped 34% since 1996. Then on top of that, 62% of millennials are living paycheck to paycheck, 8% fewer millennials own homes than previous generations. And like I just mentioned, a significant factor to all of this is that millennials are now earning 20% less than baby boomers did at the exact same age, despite being more educated than ever.
That was a big data dump. There was a lot of statistics covered in that little short period of time. And that's still scary. If this is accurate, if these statistics are accurate, it's hard to say. The studies and research that goes into this, there's so many studies that come out and there's so many numbers that come out, but it's definitely clear that there is a gap between those generations. It's not necessarily an older generation's fault. I don't think it's intentionally done that way. I think people are greedy and people like to capitalize on opportunities, and baby boomers and older generations had the opportunity to capitalize on it, which has basically disadvantaged future generations. On top of that as well, future generations haven't yet had the opportunity to capitalize on their opportunities. Like, we're still young. I am a millennial. I'm 26 years old, just like Graham here is as well. And realistically, I don't think that's a fair comparison because we're still young. We still have lots of opportunity. And I know lots of millennials who are doing well. I know lots who are also struggling. And I'm sure that it's not just a factor of baby boomers just capitalizing on their opportunities that's resulted in that. Things like education he touches on has just increased dramatically. And I'm pretty sure that coming up is going to be some discussion about how wage growth is kind of stagnant, and he dives into it a bit more. So I'll comment on it when he actually says it then. But yeah, overall, that's a scary statistic to see the gaps and how big they are. And I'm pretty intrigued to find out why these gaps are so big.
Well, first of all, here's what's going on. CNBC says that because millennials entered the workforce during the Great Recession, they started off with lower salaries than they would have made otherwise, and that is the reason for the pay drop. No surprise, wage growth went down dramatically beginning in 2009. So much so that 10 years later, we're barely just getting back to the point where we once were. And as it turns out, those first few years in your career are instrumentally important to building up your income. It was found that during the first 10 years of work, people experience up to 70% of their overall wage growth. And entering the workforce during a time of recession led to, on average, a 9% decrease in salary. Now, thankfully, the loss of income is only temporary, and on average, people resume their normal income after about 10 years.
And there you go. He just dropped the knowledge bomb that it was basically due to people entering the workforce at a time of hardship, which definitely put people in much worse positions salary-wise. He says that within 5 years of them getting a job, that disparity or difference definitely adjusted to the point that it worked itself out in a way that people were kind of earning what they should have been earning, but that's still a lot of lost time.
Career that you could be using towards something really important, like getting those 2 free stocks down below in the description, because Webull is going to be giving you 2 free stocks when you deposit $100 on the platform, and both of those stocks might be worth all the way up to $1,600. So use the link down below in the description to claim your 2 free stocks.
That was terrible. What a cheeky ad plug. I don't know if I could ever do that on my channel. I hope someone holds me accountable to it because it's so sneaky just chucking in ads throughout the video. I think there's like 4 or 5 throughout this video that I'm watching, and it's just shameless. It's a shameless plug. He's probably making a lot of money from it, so I can't shit on him for it, but I hate that so much.
So anyway, long story short, yes, entering the workforce during a recession does on average lead to a lower salary. And that means that generally speaking, millennials are earning less money than other generations because of it. The second, we can't talk about millennials without bringing up student loan debt, because this one is atrocious. Now get this, like I mentioned earlier, the cost of education, also known as college, has risen 65% over the last 10 years. But alongside that, wage growth has only increased by 26% over the last 10 years. That means when you account for inflation, the cost of education rose 54%, while wage growth only went up 6.5%.
That is terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying. In Australia, we have a system which is called the HEC system, where we have subsidized university, and in some other countries around the world, like Canada, I believe, and Scandinavia, it's free education, which is really cool. In America, I feel truly terrible for people who are studying because of how expensive it is to do degrees. And this is people trying to better themselves and put themselves in or take themselves out of a place of hardship, and they just get slapped with insane school fees. Realistically, that difference in percentage, 54% for the price of education versus 6.5% in wage growth, that's a frightening statistic. Something's wrong there. Something's wrong with the system, and no one but the universities or the people charging the students are going to win.
And to make matters even worse, on average, millennials who graduate with student loan debt owe more than $30,000. So yeah, long story short, millennials got screwed by this.
I myself fell into that category. I had about $40,000 of student debt when I finished my uni degree, and that's here in Australia with a subsidized degree. I'm in the process of paying it off, and I will have it paid off pretty soon. And it's very common in Australia for people to fall into this category, but nonetheless, it's a lot of money for education. It's quite significant. Not knocking it. I definitely am privileged compared to, like I said, people in America paying a lot more for their college tuition, but regardless, it's still a lot of money to put towards something that some people don't even end up using the skill set that they learn and pay for at university.
I think the main issue here is that we have a society that encourages getting a college degree as the safe way to be successful and make money. And many of our parents are pressuring us to get a college degree because that's what worked for them. Just look at the statistics, because those don't lie. In 1970, only 16% of people had a college degree or higher. And today, nearly 40% of millennials in the workforce have a bachelor's degree. That means that back then, not only was college considerably less expensive than it is today, but it was also far more exclusive and would demand a much higher salary. So it's no wonder why so many of our parents would pressure us into going to college, because back then, that was the solution to job security and financial well-being. But it's not so much today as it once was. So really, all of this combined is just the perfect storm of disaster for millennials.
That one is a great statistic. I love that one because it's really showing people that, hey, more people are getting educated today, but it's not necessarily giving them a higher standard of living because of many different factors. But the point is that a lot more people are going into these degrees. A lot more people are forking out cash for an expensive service. I'm not saying it wasn't expensive back in the day, but more people are getting on board today, which is putting more people in positions that it's unfortunate to think that when you finish your uni degree upfront when you're young, that you have this absolute whopping debt on your shoulders. And in Australia, like I've mentioned already, it's quite a safe debt. It's something that we don't have to pay back very quickly. We contribute to it when we earn over a certain amount of money. Whereas in America, I know for a fact that that money gets collected no matter what. People are coming for it. And that's a scary thought. You've just finished university, you just finished college, and you're now looking to get a job. And the amount of stress that would come with that is just insane. That's a big burden to put on someone who's under the age of, I was 22 when I finished my degree. That's terrifying.
And third, we got to talk briefly about wage growth, or in this case, the lack of wage growth. Now, if you're confused what this is, this just means that the amount of money you're getting paid is not enough to keep up with everything else going up in price. So even though you might see a $5 an hour raise, that doesn't really matter much when the price of everything else is up by 30% and the cost of a starter home is now $700,000. In fact, if you want the true numbers here, if we look at hourly earnings since the 1960s, we could see that our wages really haven't changed adjusted for inflation, while the price of everything else has been going up much faster. That means that millennials are essentially earning less for doing the exact same work.
Very well summed up. Great point. Absolutely agree. With inflation, it's a scary topic as well, because as things go up in price, we as human beings are going to continue doing the same level of work. It may be just as stressful, it may be just as time consuming. And if we're not compensated for that in a way that allows us to basically survive, what's the point in doing it? And what's the answer to get ahead, or not even get ahead, but just live a comfortable life? I think there's a statistic, I'll have to dig it up, but basically at the moment in America, minimum wage, like if you earn minimum wage and you work 40 hours a week, you cannot afford rent in any US state, I believe, for more than a 2-bedroom home. That is terrifying. That is disgusting to think that people can't even afford to live when they are working a full-time job, 40 hours a week, probably more, and all of that money, if they contributed all of it, they couldn't even pay for a roof over their head, which I believe having a roof over your head should be, I think it should be a right. I think everyone should be able to feel safe in a space, regardless of if it's $1 million mansion or even just a small studio or a small bedroom, as long as they have somewhere that they can basically recoup, rest, and collect their thoughts. It's just terrifying to think that. So really good points that he's touching on, minus the insertion of ads and things like that. I'm enjoying it. it's very interesting. And that's why I'm watching it again, and that's why I'm reacting to it today.
All right, so if you're wondering why you're not making more money despite the price of everything else going up, here's why. First, it's no surprise that more people are entering the workforce. That means that employers could be pickier about who they hire and pay less for that same position because more people want it. The second, even though there can be benefits of getting a college degree and it can be a prerequisite for getting a job, it's certainly become a lot more common and therefore less impactful in terms of boosting up your salary. In fact, studies have shown that the value of a college degree really seemed to have peaked in the late 1990s, and since then, it's been a slow decline given the skyrocketing cost of education.
I could not agree with this more. Universities basically want as many bums in seats as they can get, so what do? They accept everyone to the courses that they offer. This in turn gives a massive class every year for specific topics and subjects, and the outcome of it is people getting degrees in the masses. Why is this a recipe for disaster? Realistically, there's no regulation on it. So you can have 1 million teachers entering the workforce each year, and if there's only demand for 100,000, that puts 900,000 people in a bit of strife. And this is something that I've definitely noticed with particular industries in the world. I'm not going to say which ones. Ultimately, I would say the ones that are a bit more difficult, a little bit more harder, a little bit more dry. I'll use engineering as an example. It's a relatively dry industry. The content that you're learning is very maths heavy, very physics heavy, and it's boring for some of it, ultimately resulting in less people joining those industries, which provide more jobs to the people who actually do the degrees, compared to something like teaching. Teaching's a good example. It's not that it's easier, it's just that it's more popular, it's more desirable, and it's probably more fulfilling. And why that's a problem is because so many people enter the workforce and so many people kind of get screwed over or don't even end up going into that line of work or really struggle to find work. And that's a big problem because ultimately people are going to struggle to find work. People are going to struggle to hold jobs or retain permanency or get paid what they potentially should be getting paid, compared to my industry where people kind of need to take not what they can get, but like, you know, if you're a valid candidate, you probably have a pretty good shot at getting the job, versus I know how saturated an industry like teaching is. And it's a bit unfortunate because it's kind of getting out of hand now and lots of people are being disadvantaged by it.
Third, during a recession, employers tend to be very quick in decreasing salaries, but during the good times, they're very slow in raising them back up. And again, the data backs this up by showing us that just now we're getting back to the point we were at 10 years ago. That means that today we have to be very careful in evaluating the benefits of a college degree and whether or not it's worth it.
I agree with this point too. It's like employers have the upper hand and can kind of set the bar. And the problem is people are desperate enough that they will take the job for what they're being offered. And at times it's the person hiring that wins because they end up paying much less to the person who should probably be making a little bit more than what they're offering.
Most likely for a lot of people, less expensive options, a trade school or community college would be a better fit than pouring money into a 4-year private education. But as it is right now, more money being spent on education combined with lower wages means less money that could be saved and invested. So when you put all of that together and just analyze it objectively, here's what that all means. Millennials are spending more money on education to then make less money and have graduated during a time where on average salaries were lowered. That meant they had less money invested in the markets, which meant they missed out on some of the best opportunities to build their wealth by buying in when the markets collapsed. On the other hand, the ones that made money were the ones who had money in the markets and kept buying in as the markets dropped, which unfortunately a lot of millennials were not able to partake in. But instead of just making this a giant sob story for millennials, here's exactly what you could do about it, so that way you could start making more money, saving more money, investing more money, and building up your wealth.
Great breakdown, great synopsis, and great perspective for how people really capitalized during downturns and people who were unable to didn't capitalize during downturns. And unfortunately, when I was young and during the Great Recession of 2008, the global financial crisis, I've definitely made a video on it. Probably should link it in the description below. I will. Check it out. Ultimately, I wasn't in a position to invest in the share market and actually ride the wave of stocks to their all-time highs, which is where they're pretty much at now, or definitely were pre-COVID. This is not anyone's fault. Realistically, it's just how the time frame was. There were people who were in positions to do it and they definitely made the right decisions. There were people who unfortunately weren't in the position to do it, and they're the ones who kind of suffered or didn't keep up with the Joneses because they didn't have the opportunity to do it. It's really unfortunate. but it is what happened, and he broke it down really well.
At first, we should probably point this out because it's interesting, but wage stagnation does not happen to the top 1% of earners. In fact, wages for this group went up 138% since 1979, while the bottom 90% of earners only saw a 15% increase. Now, these earners are generally in highly specialized and very in-demand careers. And according to LinkedIn, that includes technology, healthcare, and finance.
Engineering was on that list, woohoo! But regardless of that point, it comes back to what I was saying earlier, and it's the types of degrees and types of industries where there isn't that oversaturation of people. It's not super desirable for people to go into it. It's very niche, it's very specific, and to get into those industries, it takes time, it takes commitment, it takes hard work, and it takes not necessarily more than what people are willing to give. In some circumstances it would be, but ultimately it's really difficult for someone at a young age to go, I'm going to be a neurosurgeon. Who the hell is going to sacrifice 12 years of their life when they're 20 years old to go into a degree that they don't even know if they're going to see it through? It's a massive decision, and it's a massive burden and commitment on your behalf, ultimately making degrees like teaching, which is a much shorter degree, and it's quite easy to get into the actual workforce if you have connections, if you know where you're going to try and get into and you really push for it, you'll be able to get a job relatively quickly, start your life, and actually start earning money.
So if you're considering switching careers, going back to school, or re-educating yourself on a new topic, picking something that's desirable should help you make more money overall. I've also mentioned this one before several times in previous videos, but one of the best ways you can make more money is by switching companies. There have been multiple studies that have shown that people who switch companies every 2 to 3 years make on average of 50% more than someone who stays within the same company. And even if you switch jobs just once, you could see yourself with an average of a 15% pay raise.
Can't agree more with this one. As someone who started in engineering and have only worked for 2 different companies, I did this, and it wasn't for that intention that I did it, but during that period, I definitely took the opportunity to ask for a significantly higher salary than what I originally was earning, and I'm not going to lie, it was offered to me. I do believe I'm doing work at the level that deserves that. However, it was something that probably wasn't an option at my old place of work. If I said I want to raise to that number, it never would have happened in a million years. And it's not problematic, it's how the system works, but I can't agree more with that as someone who's actually experienced it and can reflect on it. Switching jobs is definitely one of the best ways to get a larger pay jump. It's one of the most effective ways, and it's proven not just through me, through other people I know as well. Good touch, Graham. Well done. You're on the ball.
Now, according to Forbes, one of the reasons why staying with the same company doesn't really work so well is that they start you off with a base salary and then increase you a percentage based on that. That limits your income because by moving to another company, you could set off that base income at a much higher level than had you just stayed where you're at. In addition to that, job hoppers are also perceived to have a higher learning curve, be top performers, and even be more loyal. They can also adapt to a variety of new tasks. They know how to get a job if they need one, and all of those are qualities that any employer would like to have.
Thanks, Graham. That means a lot. That's me. I literally just did that. So therefore, I must be all of those things, right? Maybe. Regardless, I definitely can resonate with a few of those things. I definitely believe that I fall into the category of a few of those topics that he's just touched on. Ultimately, I don't think that necessarily applies to everyone in those circumstances. And that doesn't mean just go quit your job and find another one right now. You may have a really good job. You may enjoy it. I think the point he's trying to get at is that there may be opportunities that you haven't considered yet. And if you want to jump to that next salary jump and you want to get ahead to that point of basically jumping massive amounts in pay, the easiest way to do it is going to be to jump jobs. I can't agree with him anymore with this because he's pretty much touched it all spot on. He made a few key points which I somewhat agree with about people what the trends of people that do that have, but realistically, overall, his points are sound.
On the other hand, employees who stay at their current job for too long, especially if they feel underpaid, they tend to produce poorer results, and because of that, they make less money. So given that, if you find yourself making less money than you're happy with, consider switching careers, and at the very least, you might see a 20% pay raise. It's also really important to realize that at the end of the day, all the money in the world is not going to help you if you don't save and invest consistently, so that way you could participate in the markets going up over time. As it is, income and wealth are self-fulfilling, so the people who make more money can invest more, and because they invest more, they also make more money.
I cannot agree with this one more either. I, as someone who has recently started investing within the last couple of years, have definitely seen the perks of actually putting money in consistently. even during trying times and hard times, I'm still actually getting relatively good returns on my investments. Now, yes, it's strategic, and yes, I have to be cautious and aware of what I'm investing in, but regardless, it's something that I was very skeptical of my whole life. It's something that, for example, my parents have been very skeptical of, and they've done fine without doing that. But I am certain that if they actually put a little bit of money into the share market or into investments of other types when they were basically building their life from the ground up, my parents probably could have made 3 times their current wealth. They did all right for themselves, but they would have had the opportunity to put money into the stock market, for example, during trying times. They were people who were very sensitive to taking risks, which is fine at the end of the day. But looking back and looking at the statistics and looking at my own trajectory of what I'm trying to do and achieve, I'm definitely someone who's putting some money into it because I'm already seeing the benefits. And there are people who look back and go, we probably should have put something into the share market because it would have paid off significantly.
Likewise, the opposite happens when you don't have money, because when you don't make as much, you don't invest as much, and because you're not investing as much, you don't make as much money. It's so important to try to break that cycle by investing as much as you can, as soon as you possibly can, even if it means cutting back on extravagances, or cutting back on things you don't really need, or working a part-time job, or taking on a side hustle, or doing anything you possibly can. It's so important just to get yourself in the game, to start, and be as consistent as you can.
I agree with this point too, but no one's going to throw away their lives, especially as a young person, even myself, to go ham on that game. Graham is someone who is absolutely a stingy bastard, and that's great because what he's basically made for himself is incredible, and now he's definitely reaping the rewards. But he's also worked really hard on his side businesses, on his YouTube channel, and actually building himself up as a person of interest in the world of social media, and what that has done for him is unbelievable. Has been unbelievable. Regardless, there are lots of people who definitely will still need to be able to relax and enjoy things, and I don't believe putting 100% into the game is going to give you results. The market could crash tomorrow and you could technically lose it all. It's a risk. That's what investing is. At the end of the day, I like his mindset, but I strongly disagree with the fact that he says like go 100%, because no one in their right mind is going to be able to do that. There's a very, very small amount of people that can fall into that category and actually reap the rewards of doing that. I wouldn't even classify myself as someone who could be doing that. So I have no idea how the hell he did it. I am definitely interested in trying, and I'm definitely starting my journey now. I may have started too late, but I'm still starting. But regardless, it can be very dangerous because it's very easy to say, yeah, just 100%, all of your money, put it into savings. Don't spend any money, never go out. Is that going to happen with most of the people who A, consume this content, and B, are trying to sort their finances out? I don't think so. So a little bit iffy on that one, Graham.
Lastly, another really interesting topic happens to be called the Great Wealth Transfer, as millennials inherit the wealth of their parents and grandparents. That's estimated to be a whopping $68 trillion worth over the next 25 years. Now I get it, not everyone has wealthy parents and grandparents to inherit money from. But we can't deny that there are a lot of millennials that will be receiving paid off real estate, cash, stocks, and other assets over the next 20 to 30 years. And that will probably bump up the average millennial net worth just later on down the line. From there, it's really just going to be up to the millennials to learn how to grow and maintain that wealth, and not spend it all on Starbucks and avocado toast.
That is a terrifying number. $68 trillion is a lot of money, but it's kind of been like that for a really long time. Generally, parents will pass down their assets and their money to the previous generation, and if most people continue to go down a good path of getting a job and working hard, that money's going to help them build their wealth, ultimately resulting in them continuing to build their wealth. It's a great thing if the people who are obtaining that money are people who are going to use it wisely. I don't have a statistic or don't know the answer as to if people, or if a large percentage of people do use it wisely, but regardless, that's a way of life. You can't really use that against anyone. I'm not saying he is, but he kind of is. So it's going to happen no matter what. In a generation's time, the same thing's going to happen, and it's going to be a whole transfer of wealth to the next set of people, and there's going to be some guy on YouTube or whatever the social media is at the time that allows people to consume content saying the same thing.
So given all of that, that's why millennial wealth is at record lows and exactly what you could do about it. Ultimately, it's all about investing consistently, but to get to the point where you even have the disposable income to invest, it's all about specializing in a field that's in demand, where you're good at what you do, and you make yourself difficult to replace without going to an expensive college and going into debt to make that happen. Now, the job market does reward talent, but it does not reward loyalty. So switching companies is often the best way to hone your skills and also earn a little bit more. On top of that, be very careful about where you go to college, or if you go to college at all. And don't forget to look at trade schools, because those could very well pay just as much, if not more, depending on what you specialize in. So even though some of this might be disappointing, it doesn't mean you can't do anything about it. And this is a solid chance to turn things around, take a proactive approach, invest consistently, and smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm.
So basically he's saying, pick the right degree, go to the right college, don't spend all your money, invest all your money, don't do anything with your life, definitely work really hard, but don't be loyal to companies, and jump between companies to get fast pay rises, and then invest that money into the share market, and then smash the like button, which is his little way to advertise. I agree with this many of those points. Why? I could touch on every one. I'm not going to, but the point here is I've kind of touched on it throughout this video, and it's, you can't sacrifice 100% of your life, but you absolutely can change jobs when the time is right. Should you change jobs just because you think you're going to make more money? Not necessarily. If you like your job and it lets you live a comfortable life, don't. Do what's right for you. I think the key takeaway from here is not to go to uni and pick that degree if you're a young person just because you think it's going to make money, or don't go back to uni and start studying because you're a laborer and want to be a neurosurgeon. The key thing here is be aware that there are opportunities out there. Definitely put your feelers out. Definitely put yourself in a position to get those opportunities and hone in on them. If you are a young person who wants to be a neurosurgeon, good for you, do it. But be aware of the amount of work, the time, and the commitment that it's going to take. It will take a toll on your life, and it's not really like a threat to say, if it's something that you pick and you regret, it's a lot of time that you're committing to doing that. I'm not saying do engineering, I'm not saying to do anything in particular, but ultimately just be aware that he's saying all the la-di-da, this is how you're going to be rich and wealthy and make heaps of money, when in actual fact, there's a lot more behind the scenes and a lot more thought process and a lot more work that has to go into it. Be aware of that. It's important, because this video is good and bad. He makes good points, but he explains how to achieve them poorly, in the sense of it's easy, just go do this. And that's not the right answer. Rant over. Overall, Graham is still a very wise person, and he's done very well for himself considering the amount of work that he's put into his YouTube channel, the amount of money he's made on the platform, and how he's actually tracking now. He's doing really well for himself. The content that he makes is actually super useful, and it's definitely relevant. So to 2021, a lot of the content that he makes is probably going to be relevant to this year. I highly recommend watching his videos. Definitely look out for thumbnails that are applicable to your interests and things that you need to improve on financially. And that's why I reviewed him today, just to give you a bit of a taste if you haven't heard of him, or if you're someone who's gone back and forth and don't really know what to think of him. There is my 2 cents. I have left a link in the description below to Graham's channel. If you haven't seen his stuff before, definitely go check it out and show him some support. Overall, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope that it was insightful. If you did enjoy it, please consider liking and subscribing, and leave a comment down below of a different channel you'd like me to react to next. For now, goodbye, enjoy your week, and I'll see you next time.